All right. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Alumni 24 Speed event. So you want to make a movie in 24 hours. You maniac. We're here to talk filmmaking tips and tricks and answer some of your questions in advance of the Alumni 24 Speed competition happening in 2 weeks on February 24th and 25th. And you can still sign up now, as well as general filmmaking tips and tricks. All right, first up, let's introduce our panelists. So if you could each tell us your graduation year, how long you've been doing 24 Speed for, and a fun fact about yourself. So Adam, let's start with you.
Oh, good. Okay, go first. Great. Hi. We got into this real quick. Hi, my name's Adam Stackhouse. I'm class of 2004. Oh, we still got people trying to come in.
Let
Wait,
me disable that. I got that.
Class 2004. I've been doing 24 speed on and off since its origin in 2005. Here and there, depending on the year. And my fun fact is when I was doing the film stuff, we delivered our final products on VHS tapes. How's that? Is that a fun? That's real fun.
No, that's pretty good. For the
That's
younger people at the Zoom, what is a VHS tape?
okay. All right. We don't need to, I buried myself. We don't need to put this extra dirt on top. And that's my introduction. Thank you.
All right, Zach, what about you?
Hi, I'm Zach Keifer, class of 2007. Been doing 24 speed since the first year in 2005, and nearly every alumni, but I missed probably about two, maybe. But yeah, I think I've done about 33 different filmmaking speed competitions, timed competitions. Fun fact. Did I get everything?
I think so. Kay, how about you?
Hi, everyone. I'm Kay Haley, class of 2012. And my fun fact is that on two separate occasions, I have shown up or in physical form or voice in three separate 24 speed projects.
All right. Marriya, how about you?
Hi, I'm Marriya Schwarz, and I was class of 2020. And I've been doing 24 speed for about like 4 or 5 years. Very new to like the alumni circuit. And my fun fact, I'm representing the team Morton Third Floor. And we actually turned our like little team that we randomly came up with sophomore year into like kind of like our own little brand. So we have like podcasts and we have like zines and a comedy late show. So like the people that you do 24 speed you like bond with for life because it's like that major trauma bond. So would really recommend it.
Wait, so what is your podcast about?
We do a podcast called Remake Hot Take where we talk about how we would remake popular media. We have some like Nick Cage podcast stuff coming up, so it's gonna be a fun time.
That's awesome. All right, so a starting question for each of our panelists. How big is your usual 24 speed team and who's on it? And tell us a story about how you all met. So whoever wants to go first, feel free to jump in.
I guess I could start. Over the years, I've been on a variety of teams, but currently I mainly have my family as my team. So I met my wife spring break, senior year of college. And then I created the other two team members who are my children.
That's hardcore.
Yeah.
You created two humans just to be a bigger 24 speed team. That's impressive.
Yep. But yeah, our team's limited to 4.
And remind us what's your team name again?
We are Mount ZD Productions.
Hey, what about you?
Me?
Yep.
Oh. Well, I frequently don't have my own team. Sometimes I do, but I often am a team member of the Terillionaires run by Brian Terrell.
And so what are the other teams that you've been on?
Well, it depends on the year, because there was one year when I think Brian was unavailable and I just did my own. And then there was one year where I was also on Brian's team, but then also showed up in Andrew Etter's team and did my own. And then there was one year where I got some other alumni in various cities, and we formed a team called CAVACT, which was CA because we had a Californian, VA, and CT because we had people from Virginia and Connecticut. And that was a very short-lived team.
So
I've been all over the place.
How many people are usually on the Trillionaires team?
Anywhere between 5 and 15.
Oh wow. So wait, how did you all meet?
Well, I actually knew Brian in high school, and well, we didn't really get to know each other until college. So in the various William and Mary classes, and then most of the rest of the Trillionaires are his friends from various either high school before or since, and his brother is also a frequent joiner.
So Marriya, how about you?
So our team is usually like 3 to 4, sometimes like up to 5 if we're like crazy. My friend Silvana and I, we met in like high school, but other people we have from like WMTV, we've met through like drama classes and stuff like that. But also it's just kind of whoever you can get in like a 24-hour period. Like if you need a voiceover, so like my dad was in our video last year. He played our love interest. We had to make some quick decisions. And so our one goal this year is to have no one's love interest played by a family member. That's the one thing we're going for this year.
So now is Silvana also a William and Mary person?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I've just like gone her exact trajectory all through from we went to the same middle school. We didn't know each other then, but we've gone all through since. So yeah, so we've been through a lot together, and so that's why we're very good 24 speed team members. We are very comfortable with. I think that's really important is like when you're making a team, who are you not afraid to embarrass yourself in front of, because there is no room for shame in the 24-hour period. That comes later.
Adam, how about you?
I don't have a consistent group that I've done it with. Usually it's either if it's trying to come out quick and a last minute decision to participate, it's like 2 or 3 people and we go all in as an intimate creative project kind of thing. Or if I'm leading up a group of like a dozen, it's usually friends, often non-William Mary friends who aren't filmmaking people, who it's like, hey, do you want to do this thing? And you treat it almost like a social activity. And I can bring like equipment and technical know-how, but they get to be creative in a space that they normally aren't. And I love seeing my friends do that. And so that's kind of, when the time aligns, that's what I really like about it, is being able to take my friends and instead of board game night or going to some bar or something, we're making a movie and being creative together. So I don't have a consistent crew. I just kind of make a team that way.
So what's the largest crew that you've worked with?
Ooh, there's one where we probably had between 15 and 20 people, and that was too many. It was for one of the 48-hour other time competitions, and we ended up having like 3 units basically. We ended up having a movie, but there were also commercials and other stuff within the movie. So we had one group making those, and somebody else doing the main thing, and other people doing support. That stuff can get really unwieldy really quick, but that's what happens when you treat it like a social thing, and someone tells someone else, and then suddenly you have a big crew.
It does sound like a good way to handle it, though, with the sort of multiple types of things that you're doing within the one movie. So then what's the smallest group that you've done 24 speed with?
2, probably 2. Liz, who my business partner Liz, who some of you know, and I have occasionally during festival time just done ones with the 2 of us. And it's so much easier to execute on things with a smaller team. Of course, you can't have the potential of some of the assets you would have with a larger team, but you can make decisions and go and just get it done with 2 or 3 people in a way that you otherwise can't.
Okay, so for all our panelists, what's a typical 24 speed like for you and your team? And is there a typical 24 speed? Zach, how about you?
Yeah, well, I've done 24 speed for so long that it's kind of been different every year. The older I get, the shorter I spend on it for sure. I think the last few years it's been probably writing for a couple hours and then going to sleep, and then spending the rest of the day trying to turn it around. But yeah, it used to be you'd go all 24 or at least 23.
Marriya, how about you?
I would say that there isn't necessarily a typical, because I think it varies based on what your genre is. So it's like, I feel like the process can sometimes take a lot longer. Like when we had soap opera, that was a really easy one, versus like adventure nonfiction was awful. But I think it's usually we do like, we get the prompts, we brainstorm for a little bit. We like to brainstorm over food, so we used to do it when we were in at William and Mary, like at Sadler, or we would get food and go to like the WMTV studio. Last year we did Five Guys, and that was a really great decision because things feel less stressful when there's like a milkshake. So we usually try to get all of the writing done that first night, and probably like most of your props, if you're making props or gathering props or costumes, that first night. And then next morning is filming, and then afternoon is editing, is usually kind of our schedule.
So how long do you usually film for versus how long do you usually edit for?
I would say we film for probably like 3-4 hours. Usually we try to limit our locations and a lot of our content, but then editing is really where it kind of all changes. So I think that's why you can't really necessarily count on a typical experience, because your script is going to change as you start editing. Really, the storytelling is when you're editing, and you have to make big decisions on what lines are going to be cut, and you have to kill all your babies. And so it's just also the trauma of doing that. Takes a while, but also we do it at Starbucks, so it feels better. We're very caffeinated during the whole thing.
Kay, what about you?
It depends on whose team I'm on and how many I'm trying to do in a day, but I would say there's typically a tradition of watch previous 24 speeds for inspiration to start the evening, which may not be the most efficient use of time, but usually leads to some fun discussion points. And then writing for a bit, and then there's usually a like snack/prop shopping moment, and then we get into the filming. And I am not a person that can go all 24 hours, so like usually there's a break for me where I am done filming and either leave the editing to someone else or say I'll be back in a few hours. So that's my schedule.
And Adam, how about you?
I agree with the food plan. I mean, I think kind of like my earlier point, it's kind of like you're hosting a social thing at that point. So once you get the prompt, one of the most fun things you can do is sit around with everybody and brainstorm. But also one of the biggest pitfalls is you let that go to 11 p.m. if you start around 5 p.m. and you just had so much fun and you've been talking, everybody has all these great ideas and it's very fun. And then you've kind of done yourself over if you look at the clock and you aren't doing anything and it's 11 o'clock and you've eaten food and you're tired. So for us, often it's you sit down and you have that kind of brainstorm, but we pretty quickly put up the required elements and play to that. Because if you let conversation stray, you're just going to start dreaming of all these things. It's like, what if this genre and this character was in this genre? What would this story be with this character and this prop? And what if we built the short around these things? And oftentimes, several people will kind of come to the same conclusion. It'd be like, well, this person's invested in this thing, so they're going to do this, or fitting to that form. And sometimes we do that, and then we talk about a bunch of stuff, but we always end up back at that first thing we came up in a half hour. So over the years, it's gotten better to kind of just trust your gut instinct on some of the first ideas you have and go forward. And then the second goal is get the editor started as soon as possible. So once you know that, like the editor can start doing things like looking for music in our case, or if there's any complicated stuff they're looking to put in the actual video, try to get them going that first night, and then try to shoot some nice stuff and get that to the editor. Yeah, it's always about how can I get stuff to the editor as quickly as possible.
So for each of you, what's the latest that you've finished the script that you ended up shooting?
During edit.
Like what hour was that of the 24 hours?
24.
Oh wow.
Yeah, I think there's times when it, as an exercise, like you don't even have a script, right? You're like, and then this scene will happen, and then we'll be winging it, and you get to the 20-hour mark, and you're still making stuff up, and then you put together the movie, and it's mostly coherent. And that's a result of letting all the ideas just keep going, and and yes, ending each other is really fun, but ultimately you kind of gotta be like, we're going with that idea, lock it in, you're in charge, do it. Because if you just say, yes, we're doing that and that and that and that, you'll get to hour 20 and you'll still be filming things, being like, this will be fun in there. And then it doesn't make sense when you deliver it.
So Zach, how about you? What's the latest you finished a script idea?
Yeah, I don't know, because usually the script is kind of thrown out once filming starts. you kind of just film whatever you can at some point. I mean, going back to the student, we tried to film in is it called New City or something? This is an old place now, but they were building some new shopping center, and we got kicked out in the middle of the night. And then so we were just like walking back and almost had to give up, but then we kind of just pivoted. So that was probably that was like the most significant kind of script change, purely because we had to. But these days, I can speak to, for any alumni that are interested in doing the 24 speed, it's more of a constant, like, write an idea before bed, and then you constantly kind of asking, all right, is this worth the time and effort constantly every hour? Film a little, then you take a break, eat lunch, and try to reassess, like, all right, is it still worth it? And normally we actually, the biggest thing has been fights. We've gotten into some like disagreements that kind of halted everything. And had to find some way back to like agreeing on things, where we could move forward. So it's really, the script hasn't been, at least from my experience, because that's usually just sort of, a bit of direction, really, that I've found.
Marriya, how about you? What's the latest you turned in or finished a script that you were doing for the 24 speed?
I feel like we stick to our script. Like, we don't change anything that happens after that first night. It's just like, if it's a sinking ship, we're going down. We're too late to change. We might ad lib or something when we're filming, or we might add like a voiceover, but for the most part, like, we stick with that initial script. It's more taking things away in editing than like anything else.
So Zach, you mentioned getting into fights during 24 speed, and I think this is something that's true of filmmaking in general. It's very easy to get into disagreements and have those heat up pretty fast. What are some tips for resolving that kind of conflict?
Well, I think the deadline for the 24 speed and your sunk cost of whatever you've already put into it are usually enough to kind of get over what you need to.
Like, what's an example of one of the fights you've gotten into?
I mean, I don't remember the
or disagreements, let's say.
But I think it was basically, there was like one scene left to film, and I think we were just, you get tired.
Yeah.
And also, as an adult outside of college, and with all the work and other things happening, you really do question like all your choices that have led you to that moment sometimes. And and so but I particularly remember one moment. It was like one more scene, and we really almost didn't finish. But sometimes you get clarity of like, well, you don't have to do it. And it goes back to the script where, you had some thought that was maybe like, too complicated, 10 shots. And so it's helpful if you can figure out, oh, we can do it in one shot. When you can lower the work amount, that can kind of resolve your issues.
Well, I feel like it's usually what it is it's somebody, you're doing something that's going to take a certain amount of time, you're working on a tight deadline, and then when two people don't agree on like what to do next, it can get very tense very quickly. Do any of the rest of our
or one thing I would add, and I would be wondering too what other people say, is that usually when I write a script, it's like about 60% written before you're like, all right, that's enough. We'll figure out the middle, the end later or something. And you're never, you don't figure it out. So you usually, that's where the fights or the issues come in, is you finally get to the spot that you didn't write, or at least from my experience. I don't know if that's the others.
I was to say, anybody else, do you have stories of conflicts and how you resolve them for 24 speed or filmmaking in general?
I would say that you need to know the type of people that you're working with, because sometimes you can find, like, you can anticipate behavior. I've worked with a lot of like people from like the theater department or filmmaking. But my dad, the economist, is the biggest diva, and I knew that going into it. So I just had him. I was like, okay, we're just going to do a rehearsal, because he wanted to be a perfectionist, and then I just filmed the rehearsal and left before he knew it was the real one. So sometimes it's just about tricking your team members to get them out of their heads and get the desired result.
Oh, that's a good trick.
Mm-hmm.
That's very good. I think the times that I've heard with smaller team, not really conflict, but with a larger team, often it's people being like, we need to do this idea. No, we need to do this idea. And I think the thing that helps, kind of like leading a group meeting, is being like, okay, which of these most meets the assignment? Our assignment is this character, this genre, this prop, and to a less degree, this line of dialogue. What does that out of what we're talking about? And let that solve it, instead of just being like, well, you made more people laugh and your thing sounds most ambitious, and that's how we're going to choose. It's more use the assignment to solve disagreements that are coming up creatively. I think that's the thing that's come up the most. And then through that, have the beginning, middle, and end of your film before you leave that discussion. It's like, this is who exists, this is why they do something, and this is how it's resolved. And then find assignments for people to work on all aspects. Like heard earlier, prop and costume run, that's great. You can start setting up an edit. Someone can also jump on gear. Someone can start doing a script. And you spread out, get going. Fights to a minimum.
Hey, any stories of conflict from your team and how you resolved it?
I feel like the most conflict usually comes from the struggle between ambition and tiredness. And so like, if I'm filming something and it's 6 a.m. and I'm like, I don't care enough about this scene anymore, that can sometimes lead to adverse results. But then there have been other times where it's like, all right, just, you're too tired, trade out, find someone who's less tired. And like, I jumped into an edit mid-edit one time and was like, all right, fresh set of eyes says, actually what you're fighting about doesn't really matter that much. Let's just breeze through it. And it worked out well.
Yeah, I think that's a good piece of advice. If it's easy to get into tunnel vision and focus and think that like this one conflict is the most important thing that will affect the movie, and a lot of times when you've gotten that deep into it, it's not.
Yeah.
And it helps to get a fresh perspective. So for each of our panelists, how much and what do you plan in advance of a 24 speed competition?
Nothing. I
You
think
plan nothing.
No, I think you plan what meal you're going to eat once you get the thing, and you kind of decide whether you're going to sleep or not. But I think doing so otherwise doesn't allow you to lean into the assignment that you're given.
Okay.
And so like, I'm guessing the types of thing you're talking, well, you prep equipment and you have
But
supplies.
yeah, I think prepping, the things I was thinking of was like equipment and locations for two.
Boom. No. Gotta do it on the fly. That's part of the challenge. Don't grab that head. You can. I mean, that's legal. You can get your location, obviously get your actors, get to pull some costumes, be like, this is gonna be a forest thing, guys. No matter what, it's a forest thing. But I have found that, if you try to pre-plan it, just like it's weight on the restriction that already is the overwhelming nature of executing on a creative idea in a brief amount of time.
So you prefer to basically go in with as few preconceptions as possible, it sounds like.
Yeah, because that's the beauty of this project, right? The idea, and I don't even like, maybe the gear's not even ready. Like the idea is that you go in and the starting line hits and it's like, you now have a day to create a creative work, start to finish, go get them. And if I'm worrying about it the week up to the event, then I'm not spending a day on that. I'm not executing in that. Like, to me, the exercise is the appeal here, and then getting to see everyone else having gone through the exercise and what they've come up with. So I think it's really fun to just like dive off and start falling the second the thing starts, and have that excitement instead of getting that assignment and then being like, all right, we have to work the bus station into it, and we told 7 actors they can be in it even though we have this 2-person idea. It's like, oh no, you've created problems through your pre-expectations. So I'm a clean start person.
I feel like Team Trillionaire is Brian has an incredible wealth of props and costumes. And sometimes we'll come in knowing like, all right, we've got a giant skeletal horse. If we can work that in, we'd like to, that kind of thing. Not necessarily knowing how it will be used, but like, this is cool, it's available, it would be fun.
It's almost like an additional prompt.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm very opposite to Adam. I like to plan a little bit because it feels a little too wide open sometimes. And or at least I don't know, for my purposes and being able to not have to take up the whole time, it's nice to sort of check a few things off, you know, like particularly like your location. And I kind of like I feel like a strategy for 24 Speed is to have a new location. So like I have a rancher house, but it has a basement, has an attic, and it has, you know, the regular floor. And so I've done a different film for each level. And then even did a film in like one room. So sometimes, yeah, it's part inspiration. It's just like 24 Speed's coming up, you know, like, oh, we didn't shoot in the basement. So it's kind of already like starting to think like, okay, well, how could you use a basement kind of in the film? And one that's just useful because if you're working from just your house, you know, or limited means, then, you know, you're already limited. So it's kind of nice to at least break that up a little bit into like sort of known quantities that you can kind of build a film around. And also one time when I had a bigger group, we had friends, and one of our teammates, their father was a dentist. And so we actually got permission to use a dentist's office for ahead of the competition, which I don't think would have worked out had we waited to the night of the competition. So I mean, I totally get Adam saying that, yeah, you don't want to necessarily like force yourself, but sometimes you can just, I view it more as like giving yourself added requirements that kind of can be helpful sometimes.
Marriya, how about you?
Yeah, I would say we don't really prep anything. I think we prep logistics, like, yeah, like what props we have, who we can call up randomly to help us. Like last year, we knew that one of our team members, Brooke, was at a wedding. So she wasn't going to be able to like be a major character, even though we had chick flicks. So, but we weren't willing to like bring a camera down the aisle and ruin that wedding. But we knew that she was going to play a smaller part. And so I think stuff like that we usually prep, but otherwise not really. I think when we started out, I was like doing the whole like the night before, what genre could we get? What would we do for this? I had a really like I was excited for like we could do a Nightmare on Dog Street kind of like horror theme, but it just like we never got that genre. And so that's just like you're using up time and space to like get disappointed on ideas that you'll never really get to use. So I find that it's not super helpful to come up with a concept beforehand. I do know other teams that like come in and they're like, we're going to do a murder mystery. I don't care like what prompt we get, we're going to do a murder mystery, which is definitely like a way to do it. But I think we're kind of like a goody two shoes team. We like to follow all the rules. So we really stick to the 24-hour.
Nice.
I like to, well, just to add, sometimes I do like, I get inspired by like a shot or something. And so when I think it's something general like that, you can still apply any of the prompts to it. But yeah, I think one time it was like I just wanted to film a flying pan. Another time it was like I wanted to film a camera filming And so sometimes, yeah, I'll just get excited about like a little thing like that. That's sort of, I don't know, a little bit of a motivator, but it's not any, I agree that, yeah, if you're trying to like write for specific genres, that seems really difficult or challenging.
So some questions specific to each of our panelists. Zach, what's it like having your family be your main cast?
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, it's great because they're pretty much kind of on your time, or, or at least the kids, we can kind of trick them into doing what we want them to do. But the challenge is, yeah, one time we were trying to get my son, who was like 2 at the time, to say Tom Petty lyrics, and we did not finish the film that year because that did not work. But it's kind of fun, and then it's both difficult but easier than perhaps you're a more normal team.
So what's your favorite film that you've made with your family being the cast and crew?
Oh, that's funny. Well, I mean, we've only done one so far that's got all 4, since Mirror's only 2. And 2 years ago was the editing competition. So, but I guess the last one we did was fun just because we had all 4 of us in it, which was a slasher. We made our 1-year-old baby a murderer. So that's always fun.
Yeah, it's called Slasher. You can find it on YouTube, and it's great. Kay, for you, the Trillioners have definitely had a lot of costume heavy shorts for 24 Speed. How does that work? When and how do you find all those amazing costumes? So I'm thinking of the Waldo movie or Who Saved Who with all the animal costumes. How did you do that?
Well, as I said, Brian has just a huge amount of stuff on his own because he's got a public access show, Count Gauntly, and so he just has like a wealth of stuff. The Waldo specifically, I remember there's a bunch of striped hats in that, and that's because I had like a bag full of striped hats in my trunk that I was like hadn't taken for donation yet, and so that ended up. And then the last one I did, which was pre-pandemic, so I guess 2019, Brian just like came with a bunch of animal costumes and was like, we'll see if we can work these in, and then that ended up being the theme of the film. So it's just kind of whatever people have on hand, and it helps when you have a person who has a ton of costumes.
Adam, on a similar note, you've had a couple of shorts with some incredible props. Thinking of Schmunky Monkey and Incredible Explorers. Where did you find those?
Yeah, so the Schmucky Monkey puppet I've had forever. It's in that bin right there with a bunch of some of those are prop bins, some of those are equipment bins. So that was there. The Incredible Explorers, we decided we wanted to do a puppetry that looked like stop motion using like a rig that we built. I forget even what the prompt was that year, but we were like, let's find miniature toys and make puppetry out of magnets through a platform. That's our challenge this year based on the thing we got. And we went to a store. I'll tell you the story in a minute because of what we did. We went to the store and we found this brand of kids' toys. I don't know if anyone knows the brand who has kids. The cute little raccoons and wearing clothes and aprons, and we bought several sets and a bunch of characters. We spent a few $100s on things at a time we shouldn't have. And then we shot our movie. We had an artist hand painting backgrounds and did all that stuff in Divide and Conquer. We made the movie. And then we returned everything to the store, packaged it all up the next day. And it was a Hobby Lobby. So I don't care how you feel about whatever, but Hobby Lobby can just take that stuff right back. So we just got a bunch of stuff, made a movie, and returned it. I kept one guy. I have the turtle. I could go get him. He's cute. Yeah, that's how we did that. I also just through projects over the years have a bunch of props and costumes and such. But usually when we do this, look at it as an opportunity to do something new. So, but the monkey that was a year we were pretty tight. We made that movie in like 6 hours or something. So yeah.
I was gonna say I've been on several shoots where that's been a popular thing of like when producers are buying clothes for the actors, they leave the tags on and we literally tape them up out of sight so that they can return them to Walmart or forever the next day. I may or may not have done that a couple times myself.
I mean, one of my favorite things about it is having a process where everyone can have things they're responsible for and excited to do. And so when you're making the movie, you got people filming, acting, right? Someone can work on the edit thing. You got people doing costumes, props. Someone can go get a meal and they're excited to be able to provide for everybody else. And it's really nice. And that's easy in the pre-production and the production. Once you get to the back end though, you got the editor, you got some people doing some audio stuff, and then everybody else is kind of twiddling their thumbs. That year was really satisfying because we had one team cleaning up the mess we made, and then we had another team that had incredible joy in repackaging those toys into the exact way they were in the plastic and stuff, like a giant puzzle. And it took a couple hours, and then it looked brand new. And they were doing that while the edit was happening, you know? So that's, yeah, you can have some moments like that where collaboration comes out of it unintentionally by the means of what you're trying to do.
It's pretty amazing that, yeah, you were able to keep all your team members involved the whole time too with that.
Yeah, you get a good ride and everyone's excited and wants to be a part of it. And you want everybody to be invested in what they're doing as a part of that whole. And you want it to be meaningful, but you also understand that some people don't want to act and some people don't want to be on camera. But it's like, oh, well, you're an artist. How can we use your skills here? And that may dictate a direction it goes. And go, oh, well, you're good at like paying attention to what people need. Like you can keep us hydrated and plan food and work spaces and move people and equipment around. And people find things they like to do. It obviously that doesn't work if you get a team and it's 12 actors and they all just want to be on camera and make goofs. But sometimes when you pull in a group of people who aren't traditional filmmakers, they find the kind of things that they get excited about in a creative projects, which might seem mundane or different or not the right appeal to a filmmaker. But, you know, to them, it's like, oh, solving these problems related to props or logistics are just as exciting to me as standing behind or in front of a camera.
So Marriya, how about you? So what's your writing process like? How much of it is scripted and how much of it is improv?
I would say most of it is scripted. We usually write down a bunch of ideas that we have and then some like things that we're really excited about that like just have to make it in. Usually I think it's really hard when you're thinking about a film as like beginning, middle, and end. Like that's so hard to have in like a whole entire story in 3 minutes. So sometimes we kind of think about it also as like almost like a sketch or like in kind of SNL kind of style. I think that makes it a lot less intense. But so yeah, we write a whole script. There are usual like one line or so that everyone's super excited about and will like fight for on the editing. We all kind of like pick one. Mine last year was we had a chick flick, and so I wanted to have a line about how I got slapped with a chicken cutlet, and then someone says, "You got chick flicked again," and that was the one line I fought for. So you have certain lines that will stay in, but sometimes you come up with things while you're filming. It was a cup stacking video, so we talked about Substack accounts and stuff, and that was all ad lib. But it's usually our actions that I think are more ad lib, since we're so word prep. None of us were like improv people, so everything that we do is heavily scripted.
The chick flick line is I think my favorite line of that movie.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Oh, and I was going to ask you, how many people do you usually have on your writing team?
I would say it's usually like that's the interesting thing about us, is that usually we're doing all of it together. So all of us are acting, or most of us are acting. Sometimes people don't want to act. Sometimes I'm the only one who wants to act. Sometimes I play my own twin sister and that happens. All of us are editing usually together. All of us are writing together. So it's usually like all three of us. For editing, it's usually just whoever is around. But yeah, we do it all. We don't really have teams. So I think that's also a reason why we tend to sleep in the 24-hour period, because there's not really anyone we can switch anything off to. We kind of do it in that linear process because we're doing it all.
Very cool. All right, so now let's open it up to some audience questions. Oh,
Well,
go
real
ahead.
quick, Ted, you've done so many 24 speeds. I thought we might get a little more of your experience. Could you not share maybe like
Oh
about
man.
a little bit about your team and whether you prep or not? Maybe before we just heading.
Yeah. No, so I've done it with a pretty big range of teams. I'm trying to think of what the biggest team we did. Usually it's less than 10 people, and it's usually just friends that I rope in. Sometimes they're William & Mary people, sometimes not. I usually collaborate with my friend Chris as my DP, who is William & Mary class of 2012, Chris Morales. We did it last year where it was literally just me and my wife, because we were just in our apartment by ourselves. I usually prep gear, and like earlier on I would make a big list of like, oh, these are all the locations in DC I want to hit up, and then I got lazier and I'm like, what can I do in my house without leaving my house over the 24 hours? I'd like to get back to doing a big team in multiple locations at some point, but probably won't be this year. Yeah, I'd say, and then we definitely split it up by Friday night is writing. I try to be done by 11. That almost never happens. Usually it's done by like 2 or 3 in the morning. I get whatever sleep I can, wake up at 8 and film and try to edit by noon.
Do you do sleep or I didn't?
Oh yeah, I sleep for like 5 or 6 hours. Because especially as I get older, I when we first started, we would definitely go through the whole night. But as you get older, that becomes less fun. And also doing the 48-hour film project, I realized you just can't do that for the whole 48 hours. And so that trained me to take time, sleep, and then having a schedule, I find, just makes the whole experience a lot more pleasant. So usually like a few hours writing Friday, 4 to 6 hours shooting Saturday, then whatever time is left to edit. But yeah, let's open this up to audience questions. Does anybody in our audience have questions for our panelists? And feel free. Go for it, Troy.
Hey everybody, this is really cool. Yeah, so one of the things that I've done the past couple of weeks is I've been meeting with students who want to do 24 speed, who have registered, and then they get an email and says, "Hey, if you've never done this, we'd be glad to meet with you and talk about choices of equipment or whatever." But is there, do you guys have a sort of concise like advice for someone who's never ever made a film, but they're going to do 24 speed? That's the question.
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah, I mean, first off, good place. 24 speed's a great place to start. That's where I got my start. Zach, what about you? What do you think?
Yeah, well, that's a good point, Ted. I think 24 speed, just by doing that alone, is a great way because it kind of forces you to do something that you might not do or continue to think about. But yeah, I would always say, yeah, start with your scope and try to do something simple, because I think when you're first starting with film, a lot of time you're thinking about too complex of ideas. So, but yeah, small amount of characters, small locations, or one location really. And then, obviously, yeah, if it's like even one character, one location, then usually there's no reason why you couldn't finish it.
Yeah, agreed with those things. I would say make sure that you check out a camera and learn how to use the absolute basics of the camera and the editor before trying to teach yourself during that 24-hour period. Some might, if there's an opportunity to get hands-on with the gear in like a workshop situation or something, absolutely take that opportunity. So you want bottom familiarity with the gear, basic familiarity with the gear. And then I think also, I think some people go into this looking at the competition angle of it, and they're real excited about that. And I think it really needs to be repeated that, like, to follow the fun on it and not go in gunning to win. You are going, it's like running a marathon. You're not going to win that marathon necessarily. You might have a great day, but you're going to do it. You're going to cross the finish line. And especially if this is your first time making a movie, period, just try to cross the finish line. And then I think my last technical practical thing would always be watch your audio. A lot of people, the audio is not connected, or they use the onboard camera audio, but make sure, learn how to get decent audio and try to make that something you're aware of. Because even weird shots and whatnot can kind of work in a final film, but if you can't hear what people are saying, you're going to be really frustrated with your final product.
Yeah, I would agree with like learning at least the basics of like what the editing software looks like that you might want to use, or how the camera looks. I think our first year we did learn editing in that 24-hour period, and that was really tough. That was not a good decision, but we pulled it off and it was fine. But I think when you're starting out, it can be really hard to look at like other teams and think about like trying to get everything really pretty. So if you have no experience with making a movie, I think everyone has at least some kind of experience with stories in general. So I think maybe focusing on the story aspect and just getting in the story aspects that you want to get in, I think is a really way to do it, and not really necessarily caring as much about how it looks. That's kind of our team's thing now, even like 5 years later doing it, is like we just do it to get it done rather than it to look pretty, because I think it's a lot easier to get laughs or something when you're focusing on the story. It's a lot harder to get like a reaction if you don't have any film at all. So it's just better just to kind of get it done, make it happen, and then maybe next year you'll do better or make it a little bit prettier. But yeah, I would say focus on the story and getting those elements, because that's really what's going to, in my opinion, maybe that's just how I look at movies, is like the story is kind of in the laughs and the jokes and everything, or the lines are really what stays with people rather than like maybe necessarily the composition.
So who on the call is planning to do 24 speed? Ted, right?
Oh yeah, of course.
I had a question.
Mhm.
So hi, my name is Chloe. Casey and I are planning on doing it for the first time together. We both graduated. I graduated in fall of 2021. He graduated in spring of 2022. But I was wondering for everyone, what was your favorite like uh either genre or prop, something that like you like had so much fun working with since you guys have done so many? And then kind of like a second question that I had was like, what is a favorite of yours of someone else's that you saw them do? Like you were like, oh man, like that was like so creative.
So I'm trying to think of favorite prop. What was, we had one where it was pictures. This was in 2009, and everybody got just a different black and white picture. And we ended up doing like a biography of a ninja. And so that was like the town where our ninja grew up. And it was just, we were like, oh, it's Cohasset Port, Rhode Island, which felt like a pretty funny gag as just like a random addition. But what is the ampersand from a couple years ago, or the ampersand from last year was a pretty good one too, of just like a really weird prop that was really interesting to see how everybody used.
When I was a student, we got flashlight, and then our genre was sci-fi, and so it was kind of this beautiful pairing of prop and genre. And then the alumni side has been fun because we kind of have an unofficial tradition of kind of during kickoff coming up with some of our own requirements, just randomly through the chat. And one great one was to find a human baby, and I'm a big fan of part-time boxes stuff, and for that particular time they turned Zan into a baby, which is an adult, but he acted like he was a baby, and there was a note, so it was really funny. And so and then another time, I think this is more intentional, but Zuber was Sharon Zuber was a prop. I think we had to use an image of So those a couple of those things were really fun to do.
Part of the question was it prop, but also just things that we brought into our films ourselves to kind of work with?
Yeah, that could work too, like prop or genre, like something that like stuck out to you that's like been a favorite of yours, or something that the second part was like a favorite of someone else's that you saw.
Yeah, okay. So the first part, the one that we were talking about earlier with the puppetry toys, I think it's really fun once you get your assignment, and if there's an idea in there of something you would not do as part of your work or other creative stuff, it's an excuse to suddenly activate and be like, I never get to do puppetry, I never get to do stop motion, I never get to do black and white or silent, and just go and lean into it, just lean all the way into it. I think I love when you can take something and use that as a reason to go do it. And then I think one of the hardest, this was a current student film and it was disqualified for copywritten material, but Troy, last name of Adam in the Media Center.
Oh, I believe that's Adam Ann.
Okay, great. Who has done a couple movies over the years, and they're usually goofs that he cranks out by himself. And then there was one that was Fallen Woman was a genre, and just took Alicia Keys' Fallen and just had a woman falling to the song for several minutes. I laughed from second one till well when it was over. It was just so funny. It was just very, and that will always stick with me as one of my favorite 24 speed screening experiences, is just the theater losing it cathartically to this solid single nerdy joke for like 3 minutes. It was great.
Yeah, I'll piggyback because that was also the same Adam. I was going to mention him as well. He always does something really weird. I think the last year that we competed, he did like a in-person part of his film where people came down the aisle, and that was like the end of his film. Last year, I think for alumni, he just put up a timer for like the last like a couple of minutes or something. He like ran out of material, and that was really great. So yeah, you can always just like come up with cool things, because I think sometimes we think about like the genre and the prop, but we don't really think about the 3-minute film as like being part of that thing that you can play with. But I think on genre and prop, our favorite ones are usually the ones that we hated the most. Like I think our first year we got a poster of, it said Virgil, and our genre was training, and so we decided to put that together to Virgil's Declassified Hell Survival Guide, and that one was super fun. I think, and I actually have it, I don't know why I have this, I don't have groceries in my apartment, but I have this. We had this little 100 Years of Women poker chip, and I think this is a really good thing of like, you can come up with a lot of what to do with prop, and I think when we get stuck as a group, sometimes going through a list and thinking about how we could best use our prop is really helpful. So we were trying to think of what we could use a poker chip for. And so we created a whole kind of narrative around this girl who's at her mother's house and doesn't use a coaster for her shot glass. And so this ended up being like a little mini coaster. So we've done that before. We had like adventure nonfiction as our genre one year, and we did the like adventure of making a 24 speed. So I think with your genre and prop, it's really what you make of it. And sometimes the hardest ones can be the most fun, just because you really have to go out of your comfort zone, or you really like, there are just not that many options. So in that way, it gets a little bit easier to come up with a concept when all you have is like adventure nonfiction to work with.
Yeah, I think there was one year where the alumni brainstorming, like everyone threw out ideas and they all got selected. And so we had to incorporate like, you know, the actual prop I think was movie tickets. And then it was also like, you have to incorporate a Dutch angle, and you have to incorporate this sound effect, and you have to incorporate the year that you graduated. And the result of that was actually my favorite 24 speed that I've made. So I think sometimes the limitations can really boost the creativity. So turns out fun.
And Kay, what's your favorite genre of 24 speed that you've done?
I can't answer that because I don't remember what all the genres are. Like somehow, you know, they always kind of morph from the genre that you were given to the genre that you were given as interpreted by a bunch of really tired people who had, this in mind. So like I know that we've done sci-fi, I know that we've done, other things, but like I don't remember what the actual genre we were assigned was. I just know how it came out.
I think that is, though, what you were just saying before, and what a few of the other panelists have said about like thinking about things sideways is there's almost always an unconventional way to approach the prop or the genre and even the line. Like using the button as a coaster is like a brilliant way of thinking sideways about how to use that prop. And so coming up with something unexpected can be a lot of fun.
And there have been times when it's like, you get two options for genre and we've just done both. Or like one with a bit of both. Like we did one year, there was, I don't remember what our genre actually was, but we did like a music video about like with horror themes. And so I think that was a combination of two different genres that we did. So sometimes just take everything and then spit out whatever works.
I think that's good advice too. Like I always found that to not get too caught up, or just always know that you can still do all the prompts, but you can also still do the exact kind of film that you like. And usually that's the better thing to do, is make sure that you're working in stuff that you enjoy. Don't get caught up in like the genre, or the prop if it feels like it's trying to push you in a certain direction. That obviously at the end of the day you still want to be doing something that's fun, particularly as alumni too, when you're taking time out from a busy life, that make sure you don't forget that part. I got a question for Troy. You being the master of all things 24 speed and seeing so many films, how would you describe maybe like what you view as a successful film?
Well, I think you guys are talking about successful films, the ones you made. I think one that's made is successful. That's that's one criteria. But I also think that you guys once again have said this, that the collaboration that comes from it, if you think about 24 speed, like I met with a student the other day, and I just kept saying, you know what, amateurs rule the world, man, not the experts. And so just do it. And the most successful ones seem to be the ones where people are animated and see it as a like an experience rather than like a task to complete. And I think that's kind of like what I've seen. Where I've also seen students get, I think you mentioned this, Zach, get really stressed about how, okay, the genre is, X, whatever. And they spend a lot of time like getting hemmed up on what is, should I watch a bunch of, film noir, to do this, or, but to just, part of the cool thing about the genre is, there's a description of the genre, sure. It's like from the Library of Congress, and it's, someone has spent a lot of time, in genres fraught anyway, we know that, but like an interpretation of the genre is what I find also interesting and successful too.
So any other questions from our audience?
Yeah, I have a question. I was wondering, has there ever been a moment where like somebody in your group or crew was like really adamant about like providing like original music to the 24 speed film or something? Because like I know most of the time probably it's like going to like free sounds or like free music online, because it's kind of a deadline. But has there ever been like somebody like in your group who's just like, no, I want to do the original music?
I mean, I
was-
wish I had that person.
There was one year that I had a friend who did original music, and that was pretty much all he did. Like we recruited him specifically for that purpose and said, we would like you to soundtrack this. So
Yeah, I think we've had musicians before a couple times, but the idea is to get them on the task early. It's like once you know what your movie is, that person can start working, and then that can inform and play with everything else. You just don't want to get in a scenario where they're waiting for the edit to be done so they can do the soundtrack. It's like, no, that edit is going to touch the deadline. So the music person has to be willing before you start to know that they're not going to have the luxury to sit there and score an all but music film. And if they're cool with that, it's like, great, let's collaborate. Let's go get it.
I will say that, yeah, back with in 2005 for our first film, there really weren't a whole lot of options online at that point to just pull music off. So as a student, though, I had a good friend who was excellent at the piano, and so yeah, we had ours. I don't know if he sat down and scored our edit. I don't know if you're speaking to that, like a live score also, but we definitely used a complete piano track for the film and used his music. And I think he might have played it for within the 24 hours. I forget. But GarageBand was like just out. So I think we also started doing some like really simple, like just looping, whatever existing stuff was to get the background.
Yeah, it's good.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Adam.
I'm gonna say, if you ever have the joy and privilege of working with a legitimate musician who like can write musical songs and you're doing a musical, the game is centered around them. Like it is still a team project, but once you start, it is about working with that musician to bring their music to life. And if people are getting all excited because everyone's doing lyrics and stuff, you let the musician be kind of the referee, the deal breaker, the decision maker in that regard, because that is a real fun asset to play with. People come in and they get to make films and they don't get to use the equipment very often. Like, oh, this is so fun. When you put a musical on top of that, it's just like pure joy and everyone gets overexcited, kids in a candy store. So you do have to kind of be cognizant of that and let the musician do their thing without being overwhelmed and make decisions to kind of get it done. But that's a treat. If you get to do that, it's a good time.
and if you are basing your entire video around a song, you have to write the song first. And so just, plan for that. For if you're doing a music video, for example, you need the song for everyone to sing along to.
Yeah, we've been lucky to not get music video or musical at all. So we believe in like the Bend Sounds superiority, like that they're really good at Bend Sounds. If anyone uses that for their videos, I think we always do that at the last minute. But yes, Casey is very talented. That the comedy show that I mentioned in my intro, he did the score for. So hello.
Excellent. Yeah, well, question to you, Casey. Yeah, how are you anticipating your approach with music to 24 speed?
Oh, I'd love to do the original music. I'm like completely down, but like I'm cool with whatever. Like, I'm pretty good with like musical deadlines and stuff like that. Because like, I'm in grad school right now, and like every week is like another like scoring a scene. So like I think I could do it, but like I'm always like down with like doing it. And like, like what like Adam said about like, not like doing it with the edit, just like making the music beforehand and just like, putting like pieces into a puzzle about like where the music will fit best and cues and whatever, I think is pretty kind of fascinating to me.
Well, I find that music can be the thing that really basically makes a short work or not work. So a lot of times when I'm editing, it feels like, oh God, this is not working at all. And you throw in a song. Usually for me, it's finding one off of YouTube Audio Library or freesound.org. And then it's like, oh, no, this is working. And then I will do a few edit tweaks based on how that song made the short feel. But you can also approach it the other way, where like if you have a song that you've composed before you go into the competition, then sort of design a short around that song. That can make things work really well. So I think it's really cool to have somebody like you on the team to sort of be able to do both parts, either compose going into it or after you film the short, adjust that song after.
I have a question about the genre or about props. Obviously, there are all kinds of ways of conceiving of a prop, like a physical object or something like that. But is there a type of prop that is like super problematic, or would, or like when, like a prop that's like a flashlight, that's pretty straight up, right? All right, there's this object, but I'm just thinking, and as I'm thinking about this year's prop, I'm just curious, like, are there, I don't know, are there kind of props that seem to not work, or I don't know really what I'm asking, but could you guys think about that and maybe say something about props that might not work, or types of props that might not work?
I'd say, well, sometimes there were a number of years I feel like they were digital props, or
Okay.
and those were just challenging because it did feel a little limiting, or it did feel like you at the end of the screening, it'd just be a lot of people kind of really quickly throwing up an image as opposed to so yeah, I guess I would say I just kind of appreciate more of the, like, a physical prop, or something that you could kind of like, there's just maybe a little bit more of a range that you can work within, and that the variety of teams will work within. I don't know if that gets to your question or not.
Yeah, it does, actually. Yeah.
Second to what Zach's saying. I think a physical prop above all else is more fun, because then, like, if it's an everyday item, it turns into a one-item scavenger hunt if you don't have it. And then if you do have it, it's just sitting with you the whole time you're going through the creative process. And you're like, how do I work this cheese grater into my movie, right? I think that those are a lot more fun creatively than having an image and knowing the editor has to deal with it. That's the editor's problem, to put something digital in the machine or in the movie, versus a physical item, which is everybody's problem.
I'm personally have two minds about this, because on the one hand, I really like it when a required prop is open to interpretation. So I've definitely run into this with the 48-hour film project, where one year the prop was a drumstick, and that could actually be a drumstick like you'd use to play a drum set. It could be a chicken drumstick. It could be whatever you can sort of force into the category of drumstick, where another one was tape. And it could literally be a VHS cassette. It could be an 8-track tape. It could be tape like to stick something to something. And so that, I think, does open up more opportunities for people to think sideways and sort of do something unexpected and delightful with the prop. On the other hand, I haven't really appreciated some of the 24 speeds where it is like a movie poster that we include, because it is such a weirdly specific image that we do sometimes have to come up with creative ways to include it. Like I thought the ampersand was a good one last year, because that was both on brand for the festival and also was very challenging to the concept of a prop, but I enjoyed that challenge.
Yeah, I think I enjoy a lot when it's kind of an everyday item that's maybe more open. I think the one year that we really struggled was when it was the voting sticker, because then we had a lot of like voting based videos and we didn't really know how to use it in a not a voting context. So I think if there's like a prop that pushes a video towards a certain idea or something, sometimes that can be harder to work with. But then it's also kind of fun to like, how can we use this voting sticker in a way that it's maybe not a voting sticker? So that also kind of leaves some kind of creativity of how can we work with this?
I think that's an excellent point. I think that's the prop takeaway. And you can see it if you've sat through a screening in a year and just like, oh, half these videos are about the same thing. It's usually because of the prop. So the more open-ended and everyday, I think, yeah, that's a really, really good point.
Yeah, I think one thing
like
that... Oh, go ahead, Zach.
Sorry, I was just gonna say I'd like drumstick as a prop.
Well, I think it's good to have a prop that also doesn't necessarily have to fit within a specific time frame, because I think one thing that's neat with these kinds of competitions is you really could get any kind of movie. Like we've had far future 24 speeds, we've had 24 speeds that were period pieces set in the past, and when you have a prop that sort of then specifies it as to like a more modern period of time, that is cutting out a bunch of possibilities that might be neat to see. So a question for our panelists, but also anybody in this event, especially if you've been a 24 speeder, how has 24 speed helped you with filmmaking in general? Okay, how about you?
Well, I would say it is always a learning experience, and it really focuses you on what is important to get the most bang for your buck in terms of, like, you know, the first year I ever did 24 speed, we learned sound is really important. And you know, future times we've learned, okay, the importance of lighting and how, you know, you don't have to have professional lights, but even if you just move a lamp from one end of the room to the other, that can radically change the scene. And so I think it kind of teaches you how to do as much as possible with little. And, you know, I work in TV, I do this every day, but it forces me to be creative and really think outside the box at least once a year, which I really enjoy. So
I've had a direct link. Just last year or so, I've been contracting with VPM and producing some stories for a news show.
And who is VPM?
Virginia's Home for Public Media, the PBS affiliate here. And so we would produce some stories and they would pre-schedule the show. And so some stories would be tagged for like this Thursday, but we wouldn't necessarily have the content. And so just in December, I was editing till 4 a.m. for a show that was airing that day. And so, yeah, I was like, wow, this is exactly how 24 speed is. And I've done this 20, 30 times. So I was never worried. And there were no issues.
I think my biggest takeaway is tied to something I said earlier about how I just like how it's self-contained. There's so many projects to get into and work and other stuff where it's sprawling. It can keep going out the back end if you let it. It just, you know when you put this thing on the calendar, it starts here and it ends here. For better or worse, it's all there. And to come out of it with a made movie is just like such a treat to yourself. It's kind of like a little Christmas situation where you get to go and you make the thing, you make a gift for your team, for yourself, but then you get to go see everybody else's thing that they made while going through that same time experience. And each one is like a little gift onto itself. But I think the fact that it's boxed up and I know where it is and it's that day on the calendar is very, very nice. And I think that's the greatest appeal to it, right? Like friends are like, oh, what's this crazy thing? Is it going to take forever? It's like, no, we're here. Well, what's your availability between here and here? Because it's not getting out of that window. And to do something beginning, middle, and end to remind yourself that you're capable of executing efficiently, creatively on a timeline and have fun with it can be a validating thing for anyone who's in this field. And it can also just be a helpful exercise to learn stuff no matter how many years you've been doing it.
Yeah, I think the first time we ever made a film was for 24 speed. So it was a good way to learn about the equipment, especially in a time where, like, the media center, especially when we were working as students, the media center, it's like the best time to start learning about filmmaking because like everyone in the media center is there. They're all super supportive. There are snacks. Like it's the best time to learn how to make a movie. But I think it's also, sometimes when we're like looking at like Adobe or something, it can be so stressful and you want to give up, but it's like you only have 24 hours. So if you give up on learning Premiere or something, you won't have a movie. So it's also that kind of motivation. But yeah, also just like the fact that at the end of the day you have a finished film. And I think from a screenwriting perspective, a lot of times if you're like networking with a screenwriter or a showrunner, they'll ask you, you know, what can you send me a script or something? And maybe they won't watch it at all. They actually really prefer you to send in like filmed material. So, and maybe your 24 speed isn't something that you really want to share, but it's at least something that you've done to add to your portfolio. And so like a lot of the videos that I made with WMTV 24 speed, those are actually what got me my first jobs. So it's something that can really add to your portfolio.
Yeah, I was gonna say to that, I think one of the tough things, especially working in film professionally, is everything tends to be urgent and important. And so it's like you are in these high stakes circumstances with a lot of pressure on you. And what's neat with 24 speed is you have that urgency, but it is still fundamentally a fun thing to do. And so you get to basically practice being under that pressure. But if you don't make, especially as an alumni, you don't make the deadline, it's fine. Look at Zan's team, Part-Time Box. They turn in their movie, usually sometimes on Sunday. But we all love them anyways. And so like you get to experience the tension and the pressure of high-speed filmmaking, but you also get to have that fun side of it too. And you usually get to learn something new during it because we're all experimenting with something crazy.
Oh yeah, and I mean, for me, 24 speed is pretty hilarious too. It's just so funny, and I think it's kind of cool that you can kind of like, you can be like, I know exactly how many movies I wouldn't have made, or you know, experiences, ridiculous experiences I wouldn't have had, you know, like based on just having not attempted to participate in 24 speed. But so yeah, it's just hilarious to think about all the different movies that are created when you do commit to do it. And they're just, yeah, it's really concentrated 24 hours. So it's like they're very memorable, and it's this lovely film that you get to take away from it, to always have that kind of key back to that experience. And yeah, like since I do more documentary type work anyway, I don't really get to do narrative stuff. So it is just a fun exercise to do or escape, I guess, so long as it doesn't get too stressful when you're doing it.
So for each of our panels, what's the weirdest thing you've seen in somebody else's 24 speed? Hey, you look like you've got a good one.
Well, my first thought was that year that the full frontal nudity became a thing.
Can you remind us which year that was?
Oh, I don't remember.
Oh, I think it was 2014.
After I had graduated, but 2014. That sounds right.
Yeah, I believe that is Marriya Schwarz is The Farm. It's definitely called The Farm.
Yes, that was it. Yep.
It is one of the most intense shorts I've seen, and it was also a 24 speed.
Yeah,
that was a student film though, right?
That was a student film that year. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a favorite. That was a pretty compelling film for 24 speed.
But Zach, what is your most ridiculous or strangest thing that you've seen in 24 speed?
Oh, I don't know how to answer that. I don't know. I've always done pretty ridiculous stuff on my own, so I don't know if I've ever. Yeah, I mean, 24 speed just seems to be a place for ridiculous things, so it's kind of hard to say what what you would then put up as being something that's ridiculous. Sorry for the non-answer.
I'm also a non-answer, but I feel like Ted, out of all human beings, you probably have the most encyclopedic knowledge of the 24 speed library over the years. So I feel like you know the answer to this question, or a couple of them.
I mean, there was
Maybe.
that time Zach made an Onion talk. That was pretty good. It's very weird. That's in 2010's Testes, which is available on YouTube. But Marriya, how about you?
I would say anytime, I think the strangest ones for me are the ones where people do really serious videos just because I can't do that. I think it's really hard to do a serious like drama in 3 minutes rather than doing a comedy. I think it's really easy to make someone laugh in 3 minutes. So I think the strangest ones are the ones where they like actually like are able to do a drama just because I could not handle being that serious for in a 24 speed film, but they're always super impressive.
Yeah, when we look back, I'd say Matthew Sonnenfeld's films have been very impressive for being 24 speed. They're, like you're saying, more dramatic and feeling more like, yeah, like films that you would spend way more time on than 24 hours, which is surprising. Yeah.
Yeah, he did a really chilling one with his roommate. It's a 2013 movie. I think it's Dinner for Two. I might be getting the name wrong, but it's basically just one person at a dinner table having a super intense conversation, and like as it goes on, it just gets darker and darker and darker in tone. And it's a great short that was also done in 24 hours, and that's kind of nuts to me. So
I'll say Zan is a human baby too. It was pretty ridiculous. Mention that again.
So as we get close to the end here, one thing that I think it's also good is how to find team members. And so Zach and I have worked on a spreadsheet that has contact information for alumni all around the United States and all around the world. And we would love if anybody would like to share their contact info and is interested in joining a team or finding other team members to add their contact information here. I just put it in the chat. There's also, if you want to stay connected to the William & Mary film community, Alana Wildermuth does an amazing alumni newsletter that updates people on basically what different alumni are doing. She's been running it now for several years, and it's a great resource for finding connections that are William & Mary people who are also working in film. But yeah, thank you everybody for coming, and thanks to our panelists for talking film tips and tricks today. Glad to have you all here. Any final thoughts before we close this out?
I'm just excited about the 24 speed coming up. I'm gonna attempt to do it. Don't know if I'll do it, but
thank you, Ted and
start out.
Zach, like for everything. I feel like keeping this is more than a video contest. This started as a video contest, but it's become a really unique community. And I think this alumni aspect is very, very special, and something can't think of another example that's like this, where it's a playful way to have a trade that people are going off in their professional lives, and some are doing it and others are not, but there's this way to connect every year. And just even opening the spreadsheet you just have, the spread of years between everybody in here is wild. It's decades. It's very cool. So cheers to you all for growing, building, nurturing that community, and everyone who's down with playing in it.
You're here.
Yeah, I've done more 24 speeds as an alumni than I did as a student, and it's a fun reminder every year, and not something I feel like a lot of schools have. And also as filmmakers, we don't always have that chance to be just silly for a whole day.
Yeah, I really appreciate the opportunity to come back together. And I think, yeah, I will say like, oh, it's 24 season. Like, don't text me during this weekend, and no one knows what I'm talking about. So like, no other institution is like this, and I really appreciate that opportunity. And I think there are just ways that you can just like reconnect with everyone. Like, even if your team isn't isn't nearby, there are ways that you can link people in through FaceTime or through other film things. So I think it's a really great opportunity to bring everyone together in like their very busy lives. So it's been really helpful as like a new alum, like, you know, finding the way through adulthood and getting to come back together. So I really appreciate it.
Awesome. Yeah. Yeah, I think it's fun just to see more and more. Well, obviously being alumni in 24 Speed, it's just like more and more teams or people keep joining, which I think is fun. Just that idea.
So yeah,
Cool.
keep it going, everybody, and we'll see your films in a few weeks. All right.
Oh
thank
yeah,
you.
are people going to be able to attend the screening at Ampersand Film Festival? Or I guess we should say that too, that there will be a screening on March 4th in person.
Right. That's a good thing to promote. Yeah, we will be having our screening on March 4th, as Zach said. You are
Virtual
welcome to
and
come to it in person at William and Mary, or if you cannot make it there, we are hoping to live stream it. So we will be setting up an Eventbrite for that in the coming days. And if you would like to sign up, you are able to sign up until the competition begins on February 24th and possibly after that. And thank you, Adam, for sharing that in the chat, the link to the 24 Speed screening event. Troy, could you help us out with this? Where can people sign up for Alumni 24 Speed?
They can do that from the library's website, libraries.wm.edu, to go to the events. It's right there. There's an events link. And there's 2 registrations, one for students, one for alumni. And right now, the alumni and students are neck and neck in terms of registrations. But the students, you know, you guys never did this, but kind of wait to the last minute to register. So there'll be a blast of registrations like the last 3 days of that week. So yeah.
I can say we got 12 alumni teams registered right now.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I was thinking it would be interesting to, I mean, there could be a year where some weird scale tips over and that there are more alumni teams than student teams. That would be interesting. I don't know. I mean, it's 18 years, so I mean, it's, you know, it could happen.
We got the numbers, so
yeah.
Well, certainly best of luck to everybody competing, and I look forward to seeing you all at the kickoff and hopefully at the screening as well.
Yeah, thank you everybody for coming tonight, and this concludes the official event. If you want to stick around a little bit after, I think a few of us will stay on just to chat and stuff, so you're welcome to stick around, but thank you all for being here.